Chapter 24. Of course, word gets back to my dad and Judy about this whole incident, and they decide to cut short their honeymoon. Who ever heard of a 2-month honeymoon anyways? Why do they feel the need to be away from us kids so long? What's not to love about us? Whatever. They call to say they're picking up Bear from Judy's parents and will head up here. Bear had been texting me the entire summer telling me all of the adventures he's been on with his grandparents. Let's see. First, he said they made up some care packages. Again, only this time it wasn't to aid starving people in Africa. Instead, it was to help harbor seals off the coast of Alaska. Apparently, May and Jed Silver, Jude's parents, had some concern. Remember, her parents are kind, but kinda kooky. That the seals wouldn't be able to survive the frigid temperatures that far north. So Bear learned to knit. He knit sweaters for the seals. I guess you could call them faux seal skin, or is it seal pup ponchos? Pro 1, knit 2. These are seals, I texted back, that have inches of blubber to insulate against the cold. All Bear replied was, I know. I could hear his sigh of humiliation through the text. The latest project was interrupted by the Carl craze. Bear texted me one sentence about it. We're raking up acorns for the squirrels to help with their winter stock. Poor Bear, he really does put up with a lot. After all, he's put up with me all these years. The evening after all the cemetery stuff happened, Grandma insists that I go get checked out at the hospital. We'll take you, Musham, and me. But I'm fine, I implore, not wanting to get prodded and poked. Bah, then go for my sake. Nezzy and Junior will go pick some Juneberries for you and have when you get back. Well, all right. I so love my berries. We head to Bell Court to the Indian Health Service building. Its facade is covered in brick and stone cut from the local quarry. That's another thing I noticed up here, that in the Turtle Mountains, people use what they have. They have local materials. Back home in Minnesota, some people on Lake Minnetonka ship in Carrara marble from Italy, or French porcelain tiles, even flying in exotic zebra wood from the African continent to include in their houses. But to me, this makes more sense. It's more meaningful to use homegrown building materials. Oh my gosh, I sound like a granola-loving tree hugger. In the waiting room, there are about 6 people ahead of me. One by one, they nod at my grandparents, and then they do the unimaginable. They nod to me. They actually nod to me and acknowledge my existence. I am Apple. Hear me roar. The nurse finally calls my name, and I follow her back to the examining room. Don't you always peek into the little rooms as you pass? I always do too. In one room is a mom holding her baby in her lap as a nurse prepares to give the little one a shot. Down the hall, I peer into another room. Okay, so I push the door open a bit, and I hear the dad saying, Well, I know I saw something up your nose, and it wasn't no piggy bank I saw. The old penny up the nose toddler trick. Yikes. I'm so immersed in my hospital room observations that I almost lose the nurse ahead of me. She has bright red hair, so it's easy to catch up to her. Now, take a seat in here. I'll take all your vitals before the doctor gets here. Please don't tell me to go into one of those hospital gowns. They have no back to them, and I have no self-respect in them either. The nurse continues to look at my chart, and at me, then down to my chart again. She brushes her flame-red locks out of her eyes and stares at me. That hair. What is it about her hair? We are in a staring match for a few seconds. Let's see here. She says, looking at her chart. It says here your name is Apple? Is that correct? It's not a typo, is it? Sometimes that front office doesn't know. Yep, I interrupt her. It's Apple, all right. I guess I'm supposed to get checked out? We're still in a staring mode, but we're pretending that is all well and normal. If she only knew who she was dealing with. The nurse continues to flip her chart papers, and then she stops and sucks in her breath. Oh, oh my word, you're, the nurse whose head is red says, Apple, remember? Geez, am I the one on the Alzheimer's unit? And then it hits me. I know that face. That hair. I know too. I yell, You're the one in the picture with my mom. She yells, You're Marion's daughter. I yell, The picture from high school graduation. It's you. She yells, I'd know your face anywhere. I knew someday I'd meet you. The doctor chooses that exact moment to walk in the door, and he hears us yelling and hugging and crying. He slowly ducks his head and backs out. Wise man. I come to find out the nurse's name is Tiffany. She and my mom were best friends growing up and all throughout high school. Tiffany is an Indian, but moved to the Turtle Mountains with her family when she was 5. On the first day of first grade, she and my mom were assigned desks next to each other, and from then on, she says they were inseparable. When my mom went to North Dakota State University in Fargo to study teaching, Tiffany went to the University of Minnesota to pursue a degree in nursing. She did all her clinical studies at the Mayo Hospital and then was offered a job back up in Belcourt, North Dakota, on the Turtle Mountain Reservation. They lost touch for a bit after my mom and dad got married. Cradling my face, she whispers, Oh, I have thought about you so many times. It's just been so long. I didn't know you were up here, which is surprising since word travels fast up here. Some call it gossip, but we call it the moccasin telegraph. For some, it's the traditional pastime up here. I've been up here since June, spending time with my Mushum and Kukum's house. I even get to sleep in Mom's bedroom. Oh my stars. We spent so many hours in her room planning about our future. She always wanted to teach, your mom. Marion was like the Pied Piper when it came to kids. They just flocked to her. She would always try to get me to teach Sunday school with her, but I just never had the knack. We talk in that little room for what must have been close to an hour. She talks and tells me so many stories about my mom as she gives me the okay. I'm fit as a fiddle. Funny, the doctor never does come back in to see me. That's America's healthcare system at its best. We make plans to meet for lunch early next week. But as I hold the door to leave, one thing about her story comes back to me. Tiffany? Yeah, Apple? Did you say you did your clinicals for a few weeks at the Mayo? The hospital in Rochester, Minnesota? Yes. Why? She looks at me in a serious way. We both know what was coming. So, Tiffany, when was that? I tried to sound nonchalant. Well, let's see. It took me about 7 years to get through college. I wasn't a brain like your mom. I had to work twice as hard as everyone just to make it through. Trying to keep her focused, I continue. And did you have any memorable cases when you were there at the Mayo Hospital? Her hand rips the door from my grasp and slams it shut. Yes, I did. There was a case. I would have given everything I had to avoid it. Tiffany hides her face from me as she hugs me, burying her mass of red curls in my face. It was on a Friday, late Friday night, with the season changing from fall to winter. Highway 52, just outside of the city of Rochester, is notorious for car accidents. It's just a little road with no overpasses, so if people need to cross it, they gun it and try to speed up before an oncoming car hits them. Tiffany looks at me, gauging whether to continue. She can't sense if I'm ready to hear, so she pauses. Please, I beg. It's time I know. You were there when my mom died. You're right, Apple. It's about your life too, isn't it? Then for a few minutes she tells me of how the fog and the icy rain had made traveling that night treacherous. But my mom wanted to stop by the Mayo Hospital where my dad was performing a last-minute surgery. She noticed earlier that he didn't bring his wallet, and she knew he'd be famished after the operation. So she piled into the car, 8 months pregnant, and drove to bring it to him so he'd have money. Only she never made it. A car trying to cross the highway spun out and hit her head on. She never saw it coming. It happened close enough to the city that within minutes an ambulance picked her up and had her to the emergency room quickly. The EMTs later told my dad that they didn't understand what my mom was saying. It seemed she had already begun the travel back to her native first languages, French and Michif. Mom was brought to the same hospital where my dad was working that night. For the first time in his life, he was the loved one waiting to hear word of a family member hanging on to life with a thread. Tiffany then tells me so many details about the operation in which doctors tried to stop Mom's internal bleeding, but the trauma from the car crash was too much for her. You were one of the nurses with her in the operating room, weren't you? Tiffany nods, without saying a word, keeping her face turned to the floor. I'm remarkably calm, considering this is the first time I'll really know what happened those last few moments of her life. But I do hear one thing my dad never mentioned before. Tiffany reminds me of the last words coming from Mom's mouth. From what I can remember of that day, your mom said something like, "Ma fille, la pomme de la maillot." That's rough translation in French for "my girl, the apple of my eye." And that's how I got my name. Yet I never knew what my mom said before that. Much before. Remember, this all happened within 11 minutes. In only 11 minutes, Mom was wheeled into the operating room and I was born. Tiffany tells me that the doctors said they were able to save my mother. If the doc said if they were able to save my mother, they would need to give a high dose of narcotics and blood thinners to ease pressure on the circulatory system. By administering this cocktail, as they called it, my mom would get through the trauma done to her body. So you're saying Mom had a chance to live? Why hasn't anyone told me? Should we find these doctors and sue them? Come on. Apple, let me finish, sweetie. See, there's just one caveat. It would adversely affect the baby in utero. Looking at me, she finishes. If she was to live, it would cause you to die, to have never seen the light of day. But I don't understand why she never even knew me. And I can't even finish my thought. The horrible thought that my mom, my lovely mother, could have lived, and I caused her to die. It really is true. I killed my mother. I feel arms holding me tightly. Tiffany looks me square in the face, her eyes reaching and piercing years of misunderstanding. Oh, sweetie, no. You have it all wrong. Your mama, she knew you from the moment she found out she was pregnant, and she loved you every day. But let me finish the story, Apple. After the doctors gave her that choice, she never hesitated a moment. She looked at the doctor, and then to me, noticing that it was me, her childhood friend, pleading. She said to me, "Please, the baby must live. I insist." But I thought Mom spoke French her last few moments. How would the doctors have known what she said? You're right. She was speaking one of her first languages, but when it really counted, her soul was strong enough to come back lucid for a few seconds. She gave the order to save you in English, so the doctors would understand. And that's when she named me, right? Wait, Tiffany, you weren't the nurse who took that to mean my name was supposed to be Apple, were you? Oh, no, it was another nurse. But she was a good woman, and I truly think that we saw how your mom looked at you and how joyful her laugh was when she said, "Ma fille, la pomme de la yo, my girl, the apple of my eye." How could I argue with that, even though it may have been a mangled French misinterpretation? You're you're right. It's the name Mom gave me. We speak for a few more minutes, and then because I know she has a full day with appointments, I leave. Back out in the waiting room, Grandma sees that Tiffany is walking me out and says, "Oh, I didn't know you were working today, Tiffany." Yeah, right. Grandma knew all along why I needed to go to the doctor today. It was for healing, all right, but a different kind.